Huron City School Board. If you could call to order, or you could call the roll, please. I'm sorry.
Mrs. Hartley.
Here.
Mrs. Hinners. Okay. Dr. LeFay.
Here.
Mrs. Mask.
Here. If we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we sit down, if we could just have a brief moment of silence for our board member, John Jones, who has left us. So moving on, we need an approval of the agenda.
So moved. Mrs. Hartley.
Yes.
Mrs. Hinners.
Yes.
Dr. LeFay. Mrs. Mask.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Next, we have our audience and community participation. Is there anyone in the audience that has anything they would like to communicate? Okay. To administrative reports, we'll start with Mrs. Sweifert.
Okay, the treasurer's report that was in your packet is for November. We should be at 42%. We're 5 months into the fiscal year. Looking at the general fund, we were at, for revenues, we were at 40%. All funds, we were at 44%. And then expenditures for all funds were 40%. And the general fund was 39%, so we're right on target. Just to, a little reminder, December has 3 pays, so for December report, you're going to see some inflated numbers because of that. We had donations in November that totaled $23,471. We had some for the boys basketball Tiger Madness, some cross-country track scholarships, the Sandy Lunch Fund, and some others. There's a donation that's not on the list that I wanted to make you aware of, though, and it'll be on the next one. Carol Wolf gave a gift to the Huron Band, $34,902.16. Its intended use is for 50 new band uniforms and 50 new raincoats, and then the balance can be used at the band director's discretion. I actually set up a separate fund for that, so he'll have that ability and have those funds. Isn't that cool? I just think it's so awesome. So, our gap report is completed and has been filed with the state. And our fiscal year 22, last month I reported for Medicare. That audit has been done with no adjustments, so that's a good thing. On your board agenda, there's a contract for Dragonfly. This is the new, I don't want to say it's new, I'm sure it's been out there, but this is the one that the Ohio High School Athletic Association is backing now. And Arbiter is not going away, but we're not using it. So we've got that set up. Mr. Camella and I have been working on that, and I believe he's starting to start paying his officials with me. So I think we've got to go on there. Might be some kinks to work out yet, but we're working on that. And then depending on the date of our organizational meeting, just a heads up, there may not be a January treasurer's report if it's super, okay. So, and that's all I have.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We'll move on now to the superintendent's report. Dr. Tatman?
Okay, excellent. So first, I just want to note, because of the change of the meeting and the holidays, the normal department or a building presentation that we have in a month, we pushed it, so that'll come back in January. And then also, Dr. McDonald had said, hey, we got some other work we have to talk about today, so we'll just put you on hold till January too. So she was agreeable to that. I was also going to talk about Dragonfly, just to note that the winter season is off and running. Middle school swim has their final meet this Saturday, so that's a quick season. But varsity swim, wrestling, indoor track, bowling, cheer, and basketball, they've all had their season openers and are already having success. I think, well, I know that boys team has already started 0-2. I'm sorry, 2-0. Wow. And it was noted by one of our athletic historians that that hasn't happened for a new head coach since like 1956, right? Yeah, so that was kind of cool. But yes, with the Dragonfly program are up, One of the other pieces of that was the integration onto the district calendar. So last year we integrated Arbiter's calendar onto the district calendar, so it puts everything in one place. So with Dragonfly, Brian Kusable, Luann out of my office, and Steve worked together to make sure that integration of Dragonfly worked. So all the fall events were on there because Arbiter had them in as well. But as we move further and further away from that August 1st effective date for Dragonfly, those events were coming off, so they got that fixed. Also on our on the agenda is a contract related to roof maintenance. So the past couple of weeks, Chad, Betty, and I have been meeting to review the PI, Permanent Improvement Account, the fund that specifies purchases out of that have to be for permanent improvement, capital improvement, which means it has to last at least 5 years or more. It can be used for anything related to facilities, technology, curriculum, busing, or bus purchases. But again, it has to be a permanent improvement that'll last 5 years. So we've identified different areas of need and made some additional cost groupings or codes so that we're saving up for some of those big ticket items that happen every 8 or 10 years, and then we have to have money on hand to make those capital improvements. With that, we talked with this company, a roofing company, who restores, replaces, and then maintains roofing services. They provided us a 3-year restoration replacement plan, and for the 3 campuses that we have, it'd be a little over $3.5 million to move forward with that. So while we aren't jumping at that one, we are taking advantage of their services for the ongoing maintenance. So we sign a maintenance agreement paid through from the general fund. But if we have a leak, then they'll come out, they'll patch the leak, and there's no service call and those types of things. And then over time, that just ensures that our roofs can be sustainable until we have that master facility figured out, and we know what direction we're heading with various large projects like roofings and boilers and all those good stuff. So the other on the agenda is some treasurer transitional services. So Mike is here tonight. He's been in the district a couple days already, meeting staff and working with Betty. So recognizing him for those efforts. And then also the recommended to the board is approving Betty for mentoring services. So even while Mike's in the seat, if he has consultation needs, historical needs, because Betty's got a lot of that Huron history, she'll be available to us. Also on the agenda are admin and exempt benefit guides. This hasn't been reviewed in some time, so that review's happening now. These changes help make us remain competitive in the region and best define some existing benefits, such as leave types and things like that. So that's for the board's approval. Looking forward, later this week, Lucy and I will be conducting our first Superintendent Advisory Council meeting. And so as the board liaison, Lucy has agreed to join me in that quest. We're going to meet with groups of students from each of the 3 buildings. So Woodlands, McCormick, and the high school. At Woodlands and McCormick, they were selected by teacher and staff nomination. But here at the high school, there was a brief application process that was open. And Tim and I talked about the risk was you open it up, you either get none, right? Or you get so many that it's not a manageable group. We were fortunate we had 14 apply or submit interest, and so all 14 will be meeting with us. This first meeting, I've selected the topic. Future meetings, they'll get input on that topic. But the first one is last year in February of 2023, the board set the strategic priorities. So we're going to review those. Those were based on the strategic plan, the 2015 strategic plan, and then current needs of the district. So we're going to review those with the students, and then in January I can come back and provide that feedback from students to the board, just to keep that strategic priorities alive in some way, and making sure we're then ready for conversations about master facility planning and all the other good stuff. So that's kind of a preview of what's to come. And then the last thing I want to do is, and I do this out of respect to John because he was adamant that this be done, is that we want to recognize Jody for her service on the board. So Jody is completing her second term, 8 years of service to the board, and she's during her time she's helped navigate various challenges, education and here on his face. She's always maintained calm focus for doing what's best for students, the district, and the community. So on behalf of the full administrative team, I want to thank her for her service. And we have a little gift here. John was like, there needs to be a gift. So I'm going to present it. You can open it, Jody.
Thank you. You guys are too much. Thank you. Very, very kind. It's been my pleasure to serve the district for the last 8 years, and I can't think of a better group of people that I'd rather serve with than all of you. Oh, this is awesome. Thank you so much. It's really been an honor. So, thanks.
And then, unless there's any questions, that's my report for tonight.
So since this is different, do we just go right to the consent and then for a motion and then discussion, correct? Okay. All right. So we need a motion for approval for items 5, 6, and 7.
Second.
Questions, discussion for either Betty or Dr. Tatman?
Dr. LeFay, Mrs. Hinners,
Yes.
Mrs. Hartley,
Yes.
Mrs. Mass.
Yes.
Motion passed.
All right. We will then move on to item number 9.
Okay, so item 9A is discussion of board appointment for the vacancy. So working with OSBA and legal advice, they've spelled out the process. OSBA, well, the guidance and the law says that the board, when there's a vacancy on the board has to take no action in the first 10 days. And then in the 10 to 30-day window, the board has to appoint a member of the community to that vacant seat. That appointment will be made, and the person will be in there for a 2-year period. So the appointment will then go to a special election. So in the fall of 25, there would be 3 4-year renewals of seats up, and then a fourth seat that's a 2-year, finishing the remainder of that 4-year term, so 2 years. So if I haven't confused you enough. But really, beyond that, there's no requirements as far as the process to do it. Reviewing board policy, our policy follows what OSBA recommends, so it's very broad in how we do that. So the board can discuss how they want to seek interest from community members and then proceed with making that appointment. Sorry. The other suggestion that OSBA had was that, especially in this case, when John was just reelected in November, they recommended that in consideration for the appointment, you, as a board, consider what are the characteristics and qualities that John brought to the board that the voters confirmed at the election. So what is it that represents the community, and what is it that John would have, not to say what he would have done, but same philosophy or approach to characters to leadership. So if we want to start there with describing some of those characteristics, then we can talk about timelines, postings, and all that, those activities.
Very community oriented. He was in a lot of different clubs and said in a lot of different.
Keen focus on the students and what was best always, I felt like, for the students driving the decisions.
I think John really had a very good grasp on chain of command, how you were to deal with issues, because as we all know, we get emailed by parents or concerned parents about things, and sometimes they get escalated to a board level before they really should be. And I think John was always very cognizant of alerting the superintendent of an email that maybe, the superintendent wasn't copied on, and I think we had agreed as a board that when we got emails like that, we would thank the person for the email, thank them for their concern, but ultimately let the administration take care of the issue. And I think John was very, very cognizant about that. That was something that was very important to him, to follow the proper.
So as far as, I mean, I don't want to rush the conversation. Okay. As far as posting and timelines, one one thought is that we could open up a posting, ask for simple information, like basic information. Who are you? Maybe ask where they live so that we can confirm that they are a Huron resident, because I know some of our borders maybe get confusing. And if there's any other questions that might help the board decide this is someone we want to learn more about or not. And we can open that up similar to what we've done for some committee appointments that the board has had. And then look to come back together, have interviews, then the board can select their candidate and appoint that person, swear them in. So also keep it in mind with the holidays, a timeline might have to be creative because, truncated because of different holiday activities. So
Appointment needs to happen by what date?
the last date
30
that the
days.
board has to make the appointment is January 2nd, because then on the 3rd, it's the 31st day since the event of the vacancy. And so then it would push over to it would push over to the local probate court for them to make a decision on appointment. So
I don't know if this would be helpful for those of you that are making this decision, but I think I still have it from when Paul Ward was appointed. We did a questionnaire similar to what we've done for superintendent search and treasurer search. I just had to figure out when. Do you remember when Paul was appointed? I have it in here. I'm just not. I'm trying to figure out like what the year was that he was appointed. But I think I can find it. But it was just, it's just helpful to have, if you want some questions or things like that. That was helpful when that was needing to be done a few years ago. So that just wanted to throw that out there. I'll look for that, but I can forward it on to all of you.
I think we can just talk about it now and decide if we want. We have to figure it out now, right?
Figure out what now?
You email it to us, we can't decide by group email if that's something we want to use later.
Oh, I was just
so we
going to
have
email it to you to just, look at you can just look at the questions and see if it's something that you would want to use when you get applications, and then you could use that
like
as a roadmap maybe.
I got you. If you're
Yeah.
interviewing someone.
Yeah.
I got you.
So we're okay deciding process at this point. The appointment is what cannot happen, like actually like appointing someone or interviewing people is what has to happen within that 10 to 30 day window. We have 20 days to carry out the process, but we're okay right now, and that's what we're doing now is planning what the process would be. Okay.
So so I can facilitate opening up this like Google form, for lack of a better word. I think again, asking them their name, their address, and then maybe two entry level questions, and they could be, what is your interest in serving, and then what is your connection to local community, or whatever question you guys want. Typically for a job posting, we open it for 5 days. So I would say doing the same here could be appropriate. We could advertise it on our website and with the local paper. Once it closes and there's a list of people interested, like we did with the treasurer search, I could send those to each individual board member, and then board members can email me, here's who I'd like to meet. And if any board member says, this is who I want to meet, we're meeting them. So the risk is that you guys all want to meet different people and we're meeting everybody. Or you guys are like, I'm not interested in any of these people. So, but that could be a way to sort of take the applicant pool and drill it down to a list of candidates. And then when the board comes back, those candidates have to be ready to interview on the night of the meeting. That kind of timeline or process make sense, or is there something we should do? I'm open to refinement.
I like it. It seems efficient, and we can.
What we'll do. The only other question would be then, when do we meet? And the next item on the discussion is setting the organizational meeting dates, and then the president pro temp to start that meeting. So maybe that activity will then kind of drive when the board meets again.
You had thrown out some dates for an organizational meeting already, right?
Yeah, there were some dates. By law, the organizational meeting has to occur on or before the 15th of January. And so there were some dates, like 3rd, 4th, 5th, not the 5th because it's Friday, but again, if we want to try to use one meeting to do both, appoint and have the organizational, it'd have to be on the January 1st or 2nd. Again, talking with OSBA and legal, they do see the value of waiting to make that appointment until the new board is in place, in that Mr. Rager's on, he's been elected by the community. He could give input at that time. Technically, legally, right now, he's not yet, in that board seat. So, he doesn't have that official voting power yet. So the attorney in OSBA said, if you did it both at an organizational meeting on the 1st or 2nd, that would make sense.
Just joking. I'll be in town.
Thinking about custodial support, they definitely don't work on the 1st. So
2nd is a Tuesday, right?
2nd is a Tuesday.
The first is a tough one if it's a public meeting, like for the community, for our employees. So that's my 2 cents on that. I get the 2nd is pushing it, getting it down to the wire, but I hate to ask people to come in on a holiday.
The earliest on the 2nd. Oh no, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong day.
Then in terms of, so if we think we would do interviews, that would have to happen first. Mr. Rager could be sworn in, but then
Yeah, so again, by law, the first action that the board must do when there's a vacancy is fill that vacancy when you're inside that 10 to 30 days. So
swearing him in is
swearing
not a
him in
board
is-
action.
is a task, it's not an
Yeah.
action. So there doesn't have to be a motion and a second and an action. So we'd be able to swear Mr. Rager in, and then from there, the board could go into either executive session or public for these interviews, and then come out of those interviews with an appointment, which would be the action that the board has to do. And then he would have voting power. Yep. And then from that, with a full board restored, we'd be able to move on with the other tasks of the organizational meeting, setting the president, vice president, and other board liaisons and things like that, setting the regular meeting dates for the 24 calendar year, and those types of procedural things.
Want to set or elect your president pro tem tonight.
Correct. President pro tem tonight.
Yeah, tonight.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. So.
We can do the second at 6, if anybody else can.
So how does that work for you since you're getting sworn in?
Yeah.
Here.
That would be awkward if we wasn't here.
We could get a picture.
So just the last
Okay.
discussion part would be, who would like the pleasure of serving as the president pro tem? Not all up at once.
Stacey Hartley.
Second it.
Try it on.
It's just temporary.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
We need a motion then, or is the nomination enough?
That's good.
Okay. Okay.
Mrs. Henners,
Yes.
Mrs. Mass,
Yes.
Dr. LaFay, Mrs. Hartley.
Yes.
Motion passed.
I'll be so happy.
So then, if Mrs. Hartley is president pro tem, she will finish the rest of this meeting, correct?
So
Starting.
it starts in January.
January?
1 till she'll
Let's
have
try
2
Jody.
Okay.
days.
Okay. All right.
Gavel's
Sorry. Just trying to give you a little practice there.
Appreciate that.
Okay. So you have decided you're setting your organizational meeting for January 2nd, correct? Okay. So we are on to number 10. Do we need an executive session for anything this evening? It's not on the agenda, but I didn't know if, I don't think we do. Need a motion for adjournment. It's a record. It just feels awkward.
So moved.
In honor of John.
Second.
Dr. LaFay,
Yes.
Mrs. Henners,
Yes.
Mrs. Hartley,
Yes.
Mrs. Mass.
Yes.
Motion passed.
That makes up for our 11 p.m.
Yes. All of that.
Sure does.
That. We now have an average of 90.